My name's Philip Bither. I'm the Curator for Performing Arts here at the Walker, and I'm really pleased that you could all join us tonight to hear a little bit about the 2009-10 season. We've got 26 events coming your way, and we found a few years ago that it's just helpful. It's such a diversity of work and such a range of artists, many of whom we know you probably haven't heard of before. Sometimes it's the art forms itself you haven't really heard of. So it's a little window on what we're up to. It's a chance, if you haven't yet ordered tickets for the season, to kind of pick out some things that look of interest to you. And one other thing we've done in the last few years is we've got some great video artists and designers and others who work with us here, and Andy Underwood, who's on staff here at the Walker, put together a great season preview trailer. So to kick things off, I'm going to show you a 6-minute videotape that gives you a little taste of the sounds and some of the movement and theatrical works that are coming our way. So why don't we go ahead and run the tape. Thanks.
Getting closer to the gulch, and I can hear the snowboarders behind me shredding the slope. I don't dare turn around, and all the other skiers are beginning to converge like an LA freeway, and all of a sudden we come into the gulch, and Martha goes...
I wanna quit with all my skill, but I can't find a place to sit with all this red on my hands. Or even Tracy slapdash tears back to the start. Oh, 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 oh. The paramedic, threw his hands. Nurse a broken lesion. But where did it all go wrong? Happiness near and happiness has fear.
Okay, tell me, do you know where I am right now?
Yeah, I know that you are in Calcutta.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, the more or less approximate distance between us right now is 7,500 kilometers.
Later that afternoon, we saw a German patrol marching down the road. Hundreds of men. They were singing.
I'm so happy 'cause today I found my friends. They're in my head. I'm so ugly, but that's okay, 'cause so are you. We broke our marriage.
Do you think after 8 years course of marriage, a person can end up a stranger to their own husband. Well, that's an altogether different matter.
And Maureen, knowing of this imminent gathering, thought to prepare some finger food for us all.
You put them all together, then what do they make? They make apartheid or apartheid, whichever way you pronounce it. It still means genocide. Now, what does that mean? That means another brother died. What does that mean? That means another sister died. What does that mean? That means another baby cried. What does that mean? Another politician lied. They like to separate the black from the white. They like to separate black people from our rights. Is that right?
Excellent job, people. Thank you very, very much.
That's the voice of Morgan Thorson, who, if you didn't quite get it, the framing of the whole season was built around a production residency that Morgan was doing right here on this stage about 2 or 3 weeks ago with the rock band Low. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I get to it in our presentation. But we do, whenever possible, not only commission work, which is increasingly important because artists are not having as much in this economic climate, organizations committing resources in advance to new work. And that's really often how new work gets developed. It's always been a guiding principle for us here at the Walker. But ever since we built this theater in 2005, when we opened it, we really built it in part to serve as a tool for artists to finish making work. So most of the time when we're commissioning projects, we also find a way that we can give the resources of this stage, remarkable technicians, equipment, housing, all kinds of support for artists so that they can really bring the work to a whole new level. And increasingly, I hope American artists can compete more effectively with artists all over the world at international festivals and elsewhere. It's really one of the missing things in the American art scene right now, especially for contemporary artists. So Morgan, who's a choreographer based here in the Twin Cities, was working with Alan and Mimi from Low. They were here for 2 weeks, fully teching and working on the lighting. This work is now going off to premiere in September, I think in Houston, Texas, and it will come back and be with us in March. A couple other things I want to mention about the season that just mark it. We often talk at the Walker about a key principle being globally minded, and this year we truly is a kind of remarkably international season. We have artists coming our way from Germany, Congo via Senegal, Bali, Ireland, Holland, England, Cuba via New York, Iraq, Mali, Iceland, South Africa, China, Brazil, New Zealand via Minneapolis, and Japan and China. These are artists who are all working in contemporary ways. Really, the world has shrunk a great deal, and the influences and connections that artists are making are really happening at warp speed. And so we want to be a home to show off how artists are working now in many different parts of the world. We also are increasingly seeing artists blur the lines between disciplines. It's really the idea that this is dance and this is theater, or this is a certain kind of music are really falling by the wayside. I think they have been for decades, but it seems that too seems to be speeding up. And you'll notice as we talk about the season that a lot of the works are really sort of part dance and part theater and part media, and in particular our Out There Festival, which is now in its 22nd year, is a chance for us to really celebrate work that doesn't at all fit in any neat category. But a lot of the work through the season really blurs lines between dance, theater, music, and even sometimes visual art, architecture, design. Last thing I might mention, the special thing, partnership has always been really important to the Walker. I think we are lucky enough to live in an amazing cultural community here in the Twin Cities, and we've always enjoyed and really sought out key partners, both community-based partners as well as co-presenting partners. And we've had long-standing relationships with Northrop Auditorium, with the Southern Theater. This year, really actively working with Cedar Cultural Center, and for the first time in 5 years, doing a big project with the Guthrie Theater again. So it's great, even though we're no longer next-door neighbors, to be working together with the Guthrie. The first event that I'd like to tell you about, you know, a lot of times people say, well, tell me the 3 things I really have to come and see. And I always avoid it, and I try to, you know, beg off by saying it's like picking your favorite children or something like that. And, but if somebody said, what is one of the events that you think may be the least fully recognized, might slip between, you know, sort of between the cracks, and might come and go without people really getting a chance to sit up and take notice, it would probably be Ryman Hogue. Ryman is a remarkable artist. He was that man who had his hands to his lips at the end of the video. I'd not seen his work until last year when I went to the Montpellier Dance Festival, and I saw a piece called Bolero Variations. This is an artist who spent his first years as a critic and a writer and journalist, writing about outsider figures in his home of Wuppertal, Germany. Went on to become a dramaturg, basically someone helping to direct and shape the work of another artist, and it happened to be the great Pina Bausch, who was a dance theater maker in Germany, very influential, made incredible work. And all through the 80s and early 90s, Ryman Hogue worked directly with her on her work. Pina Bausch sadly passed away this past summer. And he makes work that does live very much between the worlds of theater and dance. It's a work here that when I saw it, I didn't quite realize that the short man who had a misshapen spine and came out on stage, and you couldn't kind of take your eyes off him, and he slowly glided around the stage in a minimalist but electrifying way, kind of marking out the rectangle of the space. And then slowly out came 5 beautifully trained dancer theater artists who made these vignettes that were beautifully responsive to the music. The music being a whole series of boleros, which are Spanish love songs that now that came from Cuba, came from Latin America, came from Spain, as well as many different versions of Ravel's classical music orchestra piece that is basically one slow build crescendo. He used a version that was all traditional instruments from Japan, a version that was by Benny Goodman, one by the Berlin Philharmonic, even an excerpt from the ice skating routine by Torvel and Dean in '84, who used bolero for their great gold medal winning ice skating routine. Well, throughout this piece, there's a sense of ritual, of a kind of theatrical splendor. Ryman is in and out of the stage itself, and I can't quite describe it, but it's electrifying, and I hope you'll have a chance to come out. Over the last few years, really the last decade or two, we've introduced a number of leading forces in European dance, people like William Forsythe and Anna Teresa de Keersmacher and Jerome Bell and others, Emmio Greco. Well, Ryman Hogue is one of those figures who I hope you don't miss. This is not in the season booklet, but we were working on it for months, and it landed about a week after we went to press. And we're really happy that the electronic music artist, ex-Roxy Music member, legendary producer Brian Eno, who almost never goes out and about and does public talks or concerts anymore, was willing to come with his friend, trumpeter-composer John Hassell, and do a conversation here at the Walker. Now I'm really going to get into my sort of Barnum and Bailey sales pitch thing here. Well, we put it on sale. It sold out almost right away. But we held off. We've got 20 or 25 tickets or something for those who may still not have ordered their packages of tickets to the season. So if you find 5 things that you'd like, and you get a big discount for that as well, you'll also get a free ticket to see Brian Eno in conversation with John Hassell. The first music event of the season is a young woman, 22 years old, out of the UK. She has both done everything from compose for the London Philharmonic to been a grime DJ in the club scene in London. She's got a very cool band called Mikachu and the Shapes. And it has a kind of, if you know the old band, British band Gang of Four, kind of a fractured, intense rhythm. She uses some kind of modified guitars in her playing. She's a fan of Harry Partch, who's one of the kind of inventors of homemade instruments. And she's really a mix of kind of crazy, unexpected pop music and the avant-garde. And she puts on great shows. She was at South by Southwest, the big music festival in Austin, when huge buzz went around about her. She's doing her first U.S. tour, and we invited Dessa from the hip-hop collective Doomtree, wonderful spoken word artist and singer, to bring in to introduce an acoustic quartet to open the evening with Mikachu and the Shapes. The very next night, we work with Cedar Cultural Center again with a band coming out of Johannesburg, South Africa, called Blackjacks. Blackjacks is a band, even though much of the music we've presented from Africa has been related in some way to traditional forms, contemporary versions of ancient African traditions. In many ways, Blackjacks is there we go, sorry, is kind of a leading new voice of African rock music. Some refer to them as a kind of electro-funk version of TV on the radio, and they mix in elements of African rhythms and melodies along with a very kind of electronic and really cool kind of sonic magical sound. And they too have been getting a lot of buzz, a lot of talk. I have not seen them live, but their live shows are supposed to be great. And this will open a festival that's happening over the weekend. We're just involved in the opening night, but there's a really cool World Music Festival happening at Cedar the rest of that weekend. But we both, Rob Simons at Cedar and I, decided this would be the band to kick things off. There's a little reception for Walker members, Cedar members, before the concert. But I hope you can come and check out Blackjacks from Johannesburg. As mentioned, Ragamala Dance and Sudamani working for the next month here in town to finish making their new piece, Davi, which means duality. And when we commissioned a Setu for the Sculpture Garden, and we had 6,000 people come out over 2 nights, a beautiful collaboration and piece. You never know really how, when artists come from different parts of the world, different cultures, how they actually may gel or not. And when I recommended that Rani Ramaswamy, the leader of Ragamala, when she was interested in working with a Balinese artist, and I suggested Deva, and as soon as they met, they clicked right away, and they found a way that their two art forms could speak to one another. Of course, they share Hindu traditions, and they decided with their first piece to sort of tell stories from the Ramayana. And they're continuing and going deeper in that realm, taking 3 pivotal tales from the Hindu sacred text, the Ramayana, but doing them in a very contemporary way. They're taking traditions that are rooted in thousands of years of history. In Rani's case, the classical South Indian dance form of Bharatanatyam, with Balinese gamelan and movement, Balinese dance. And they feel, and I agree with them, that these stories are universal, and they're stories that teach us things in our lives today. There'll be 25, I think, performers on stage. Ragamala is really a great company. it's a company that, while steeped in the traditions and very committed to the authenticity of Bharatanatyam, they're very open to other influences, and somehow they're able to stay true to the art form of Bharatanatyam, but finding seamless ways that these disparate elements come together. So I'm really excited about this next piece. Our project with the Guthrie this year is a piece by a young Irish playwright named Enda Walsh. Enda writes this kind of work that's intense and beautiful and horrific at the same time. Often it's people in sort of desperate straits. And I'm going to take a break from talking and let my colleague Joe Dowling, the artistic director of the Guthrie Theater, tell you a little bit about this play.
For so many years, the Guthrie and the Walker were almost interchangeable. We lived side by side and we worked together very closely, and we obviously had a program of work that we did together in the performing arts area. So now we're back together with the Walker, and this time the Walworth Farce with the Druid Company will be at the Walker Arts Centre Theatre. So I think we've sort of really reached a very good opportunity for both the Walker and for the Guthrie to present this play. Enda Walsh is talk about Brian Friel as the kind of grandfather, as it were, of Irish theatre, which indeed at this point he is, then Enda Walsh is one of the sort of more worthy grandchildren, because he's a young writer in his late 20s, early 30s. He has a remarkable gift for comedy. He's a remarkable gift for characterization, and he's written in the Walworth Farce a most interesting, intriguing, and at times disturbing story about how we tell our stories, how we recreate life, and whether life as art and art as life, and yet he does it in a way that certainly I thought was unique to his. I've never seen it done in this way before. These three men telling the story over and over again, and the way in which the story unfolds day after day after day helps us to understand that when something major happens in our lives, we tend to want to tell that story again and again, and of course it gets shaped finally into art, and that's what the play is about. But that makes it sound pretentious, and it makes it sound pompous. It's nothing of the kind. It's hilariously funny. That's what I was so intrigued when I saw it. And the Druid Company in Galway is a major Irish company. We had them here at the Guthrie in 2006 with the Druid Sing, which was all of John Millington Synge's plays. And they truly have carved out for themselves an international place. Their director, Gary Hines, is a remarkable woman who really was the first woman director to win a Tony Award in New York, and has had just a major international career. She's a remarkable person. And their company continues to be, one of the dominant touring companies in the world now. They do plays of course, all through Ireland. They do them in Britain. They do them in the United States. They are in Australia. They really have become a major international touring force. And the fact that we here have a relationship with them and have the opportunity to bring them here makes me very happy as an Irish person, but also I believe will make our audience very happy, because it's a terrific play.
Thank you, Joe. It is nice when these things happen this way. Joe saw the play in New York. I'd seen it a little bit earlier in Edinburgh. We both loved the work. I responded to this kind of crazy, almost anarchic energy. It's built as a farce, even though farce is not part of Irish theater traditions. And Enda Walsh created this piece about these two brothers and dad, and they're making this play over and over and over with these goofy wigs, and they're in their rundown, dingy flat in London, and you're slowly getting the feeling that there's something very dark and disturbing that is in their history, that they're kind of using this tale telling to avoid the truth. And when a stranger enters into the scene, kind of all hell breaks loose. And it's a visceral and intense and beautiful production. And I look forward to having the Druid Theater here and working with the Guthrie. This is you know, it also got rave reviews in London and in New York, in Ireland and Scotland, I'm glad the critics agreed with Joe and I. So, coming out of Iceland, this very cool band called Moom, which is very much kind of part of the scene of bands like Sigur Rós and others out of Iceland that has a very interesting new rock and electronic music scene. Moom has not toured in the States for 7 years and put out some great records in the early 00s, and they're now coming back. They just put out a new record. Some people refer to it as folktronica. They use everything from laptops to harmoniums to cellos. They make a kind of haunting, almost childlike sounding music, it's sometimes referred to as a kind of chamber pop music. And they'll be on the stage here. We'll be co-presenting this with Cedar as well. They've invited their friend, Sing Fang Booz, to come with them, who's part of a band called Sea Bear. And he does really interesting music as well. And I think members of Moom will join him as part of the opening set. On November 7th, this is, if you're fans of either of these ensembles, actually one is a soloist, I would encourage you to pick up tickets pretty quickly because it's sold almost 300 tickets already. Owen Pallett is a guy out of Toronto who does tape looping with violin and vocals and creates this kind of lush orchestrated music playing only solo. And he had a huge article in the New York Times Magazine a few months back, and is a really interesting creator of a kind of part of a new generation who makes music on his own, but creates a sound palette that feels like it's practically a full orchestra around you. He's actually arranged the music for a lot of groups, including Grizzly Bear, and he's worked with Stars and the Arctic Monkeys, and has toured with Arcade Fire, did the string arrangements for their last 2 records. And he's been commissioned by Bang on a Can All-Stars and the CBC Orchestra. He'll be sharing the evening with colleagues and friends called the Mountain Goats, which is essentially a single guy named John Darnielle, who's a composer and singer and makes these pop melodies which hide a kind of disturbing and sometimes surprisingly dark themes underneath. Mountain Goats are also an interesting band that hasn't been through for quite some time, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Owen and John and his ensemble end up playing together a bit as well. Reggie Wilson is a dance maker based in Brooklyn, New York. There's been quite a few projects in recent years that we've seen in the States anyway that have been combinations of artists based in Africa and choreographers or theater makers based here in the States. I would have to say Reggie Wilson has gone deeper into the investigation of global collaboration than almost any American artist that I know. He seems to spend much of his time traveling through the Caribbean as well as throughout the continent of Africa. He first met Andrea Oumba in 2002, and they kind of hit it off. Andrea is originally from the Congo, but was displaced by the civil war there and has been living in Senegal the last 18 years. That's where his company is based. And these two artists, Reggie, who has a company called Fist and Heel Dance Company based in Brooklyn, and Andrea were interested in exploring not only movement vocabularies from the continent of Africa and from the US sort of postmodern dance scene, but also investigating connections between river basins as kind of roots of culture. It's Reggie who is quoted as saying that both the Mississippi River, and he kind of has done some family research and has found his family's roots in the US dating back to the early 1800s in the Mississippi Delta. And he said that these two places, the Congo River and the Mississippi, at least the Delta, are the bottom of the bottom, politically, economically. Yet they're the crucible of cultural production in both of these continents with enormous influence. The Delta is the backbone of American culture, and that's true of the Congo River in Africa as well. They have been working for almost 3 years, on and off now. It's tough to get artists from two continents together and make work, but they've somehow found a way to have 10, 12 different weeks with their companies together working on this piece. And I'm going to show you a little clip. The imagery that they devise is sometimes charged, sometimes very funny. The music they use is a mix of African and African American music. And you'll see this little clip is using music from New Orleans, but right before it was West African drumming music, and they seamlessly have woven this kind of thread of a musical score together. So here's Reggie Wilson and Andrea Oumba. That's an excerpt from a work in progress of the show, The Good Dance. And this is a piece that will premiere here at the Walker. We've given the artists 2 weeks to work together here on the stage in a production residency. And then after its premiere here, we'll go on to tour pretty extensively through the US, including at BAM's Next Wave Festival. In mid-November, we're bringing a jazz composer, musician, collaborating with Northrop Jazz Season, a guy named Daphnis Prato, who's really a kind of next-generation force in the Afro-Cuban music scene. Of course, Cuban music has long influenced American jazz, and all the way back from Dizzy Gillespie and long before, there were shared influences between Cuban and American musics. Daphnis was born and raised and trained in Cuba. He's been part of the New York jazz scene now for about a decade or so, and he plays with everybody. He's the go-to guy in terms of a master Cuban percussionist, but he's also a terrific composer. He writes in lots of different styles, quite contemporary jazz, but really creates harmonic and rhythmic complexity in his compositions, and he's got a great band, a sextet. So it's really, in some ways, an introduction. He's never played in Minneapolis before, and we're glad that Northrop and the Walker together are introducing him to this market. I think he'll be. I think people will come to see it. Will love this artist's work. Choreographers Evening is now over 30 years old. It's our annual showcase of Twin Cities dance. Each year we turn the keys and the place over to a local choreographer. In this instance, it's the duo Body Cartography, who's made up of Olive Baringa, who's originally from New Zealand, and Otto Ramstead, who make up this ensemble. They've already done their auditions. They've selected a really great mix of artists. It happens on Thanksgiving every year, the Saturday of Thanksgiving, and it's usually 8 or 10-minute small slices. So if you don't like one thing, there'll be something new coming your way. We do it for 2 performances. They almost always sell out, but it's a great celebration of the richness and the sort of vitality of the Twin Cities dance scene. Eric Friedlander is a cellist and a composer. He made a work that he's been working on a piece for a couple of years called Block Ice and Propane. Eric is in his probably mid-40s, maybe late 40s, and he's played with everybody in the downtown jazz and new music scene in New York, played with a lot of pop and other musicians. He's a wonderful cellist, but he also, after many years of kind of wanting to keep the fact under wraps that he's the son of the great American photographer Lee Friedlander, he decided to kind of embrace his father's work and his own family history and actually make an evening not just of cello compositions, which are really kind of a mix of Americana music. He's able to kind of keep rhythms and play melodies all at the same time on the cello and use subtle electronic techniques in his playing, but also to tell stories about growing up on the road with his dad and mom and his sister on one of these old campers that you can see from a Lee Friedlander photograph. There was a big Friedlander show at the MIA just about a year ago or so. We have a couple of Friedlander pieces in the Walker collection as well. And he decided to put an evening together of stories about going on these family road trips, something that I think many of us remember very fondly. These were 3-month-long road trips out west. He and his sister laying on the top of the cab, looking out that little window above the driving area, and writing music around the memories of what those road trips were like. His dad has given him rights to use all these photographs that nobody's ever seen that he took during these summer forays, and he's also involved the art filmmaker Bill Morrison into creating some other sort of more abstract imagery. So it's a mix of video, storytelling, and music. We have a little clip from a recent kind of work-in-progress performance that they did that I want to show you. In that little clip, you didn't see any of the Lee Friedlander photographs, just some of the imagery that Bill Morrison made. But it should be a beautiful night. This is a project that the Walker, along with the Wexner Center and Dartmouth College and the TBA Festival in Portland, are co-commissioning. We jump into Out There every January. It's a festival of new performance work, projects that are kind of pushing theater into new directions. And more than maybe almost any project we've done as part of Out There, this piece by Rimini Protocol really redefines what theater is exactly. It's a one-on-one interactive theater experience. It's called Calcutta in a Box. And I had a chance to experience it in New York last year. and have now been doing research and connecting with the Rimini Protocol folks. It's a German theater company that uses non-trained performers and really sort of everyday people in their theater works. And I just saw a new piece of theirs a few months ago that was also really amazing. This piece, you go into a room. We haven't quite picked the room yet, but it will be memorable. I'm hoping it might be high up in a building somewhere. By yourself, you make an appointment. The performance only happens with one person at a time for an hour. And you find yourself ending up on the phone. A phone rings, a cell phone on a table halfway across the room, and it rings, and you end up answering it, and there's actually a call center worker from Calcutta on the phone with you. And I found myself ended up in a conversation about religion and death and marriage and life and theater and what the job of a call center worker is really like and all this stuff. And it gave me it opened up whole windows. I thought I knew some things about life in India and in Calcutta, but it was really amazing. Beyond just a kind of global exchange program, it really is shaped as an artistic experience as well. And I won't give it away, but by the end, you do end up getting to see the person you're talking to, and you do end up having tastes and sounds and other elements of life in India. And for me, it's the work of Rimini Protocol is kind of redefining, throwing everything up and saying, what could theater be in a new media age, in an age of new technology? And it does it in a really intriguing way. So we're running it for an entire month. We're going to open out there, we hope, with one of the 3 artistic directors of Rimini Protocol doing a talk here on our stage about all of the amazing work that they've done over 10 or 15 years. But then, basically, for the month, we will take for 5 hours a night sign-ups for people who want to have the call-cut-in-a-box experience. So the hard part, of course, for us financially is the fact that in a month we can't even fit as many people as we can do in one night in this theater. But I think the form and the experience is that special that it's really worth getting this here to the Twin Cities. The first official theater, with more than one person at a time, piece is a piece by a young theater collective out of Brooklyn, New York, called Radio Hole. These guys have been sort of under the radar for a good number of years, making kind of wild, goofy, unpredictable, somewhat anarchic, enjoyable work in their little space of called Collapsible Hole in Brooklyn. And they're starting to get out to European festivals and get some bigger engagements. And PS 122, the Warhol Museum and the Walker joined forces to give them a commission to make a new piece, which, as you'll hear from Eric, we have a little clip of Eric Dyer, the artistic director, combines John Milton's Paradise Lost and the campy, now campy, Douglas Sirk film, All That Heaven Allows, and some of his other films. So here's a little message that they made just for us from the folks of Radio Hole.
I'd like to begin by thanking you and the company for taking the time to talk with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for the beer and the opportunity.
Can you tell viewers in the greater Minneapolis area what they might expect?
Sure. Okay. The title of the work, wah, or whatever heaven allows, speaks for itself, you know, as titles should. Okay, but to elaborate a little bit, this work is a reconnection with the melodramatic roots of religious ritual. We have found the films of Douglas Sirk. Oh, can you hang on just a second? Hi.
Hi, I'm 50 floors above LaGuardia Airport, and I ain't coming down for nobody.
We found in the films of Douglas Sirk an excellent example, okay, of this, particularly his famous melodramas of the 1950s, Magnificent Obsession, Written on the Wind, All That Heaven Allows, Imitation of Life. Now what we've done here is take All That Heaven Allows as our template, and we've reworked the screenplay, folding in language and imagery and themes of Paradise Lost. Such. We're not of the school that believes the future of theater and indeed the so-called truth resides solely in actors standing around on stage reciting a playwright's words. Our theater is much more of a Baroque ritual than that. You see, we believe in employing technology, imagery, scenery, and in particular sound, which is the heart of the ontological experience of theater, to create a more vital, visceral, playful, and on some level, truthful experience. It's an immersive experience, like taking a bath. Now, that said, we're not technologists either. We don't take a reverent attitude towards technology and make it the center of everything the way some do. In fact, we consciously push high technology to a lower level. The performers do everything. There are no priests of technology standing high above stage in the back of the house. We treat complex digital technology as if it were just flicking the switch to turn on the garbage disposal. And that's about it.
Come on, come.
So that's whatever heaven allows. The next piece of Out There is a storyteller, monologuist, theater artist named Roger Gwenvar Smith. He was here with a piece called The Huey P. Newton Story. It was electrifying and intense and a great piece of theater. He came back actually on the week of 9/11 with a new commissioned piece called Iceland that we did. And so it's been a number of years, but I heard a recording of this piece, The Watts Tower Project, which is basically like a memoir, but performed by him about growing up in LA in the 60s. And it weaves everything from the visual art of Jean-Michel Basquiat to the music of Mango Santa Maria to Mingus to baseball to the sort of central metaphor of these towers that sit in the neighborhood of Watts in LA that were built by an Italian immigrant named Simon Rodia over about 3 decades. And he just kept building and building, and they ended up these beautiful art pieces. They're really outsider art monuments. And when he finally finished in the 60s, he just turned around and left them. And ever since, the community has adopted them. During the Watts riots, it was one of the few things that survived unscathed. And Roger uses images of the Watts Towers surrounding him on stage to weave this beautiful poetic tale about growing up in LA. So that, and then the final piece of Out There will be a company coming out of Holland called Hotel Modern. This is a company that has an ingenious form of kind of object theater animation. They do a piece about the First World War called The Great War, based on letters from soldiers during the First World War. But everything that happens on stage, and they will use, I will tell you, the entire depth. This stage goes back another 10 feet with objects and little setups with miniature video cameras that run through blades of grass and pieces of broccoli and nails and all kinds of different kinds of objects. They have a sound effects guy who's making the sound effects before your eyes, and it's all projected up on a screen, and you're convinced that you're watching both puppet and object theater unfold, but also truly like a documentary about the First World War. It's an amazing experience. In February, we have a residency with the great jazz guitarist Bill Frisell. Frisell lives in kind of multiple worlds. He's both creates this kind of timeless Americana music. If you haven't heard his guitar sound, as soon as you hear a note of Bill Frisell, you know it's him. It's this kind of atmospheric, shimmering, beautiful sound. He uses his pedals in a way that nobody has figured out how he does it. But he's played with everybody also, you know, in the 80s in the downtown music scene. But since then has become a sort of perennially the Downbeat magazine, jazz magazine's kind of guitarist of the year, and one of the great, not just jazz artists, but I think American musicians of our time. We've commissioned a number of works. A few years ago, we did a piece called The Disc Farmer Project here on the stage. This year, Bill had mentioned that he had always been interested in finding a way to collaborate with a great Iraqi oud player. An oud is a kind of Iraqi-based fretless lute kind of instrument, a guy named Rahim Al-Haj, who was forced out of Iraq during Saddam Hussein's time, lived in Syria, lived in Europe, and is now based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is considered one of the masters on the instrument. He plays both very contemporary oud music as well as knows all of the traditions. And Avon Kang, who's a Seattle-based musician, multi-instrumentalist. The three of them will be creating together a series of new compositions and putting on, kind of premiering the concert here at the Walker for two performances at the end of their week residency. Coming from a small favela neighborhood outside of Rio called Niterói is a dance company from Brazil that has gotten a lot of attention throughout South America and throughout the sort of festival scene in Europe. I finally had a chance to catch up with them at a dance festival in Rio. I've been hearing great things about them, and they truly were remarkable. It's 9 or 10 young guys, and what I find interesting about them is that they kind of take some of the rigor and the thinking around modern and postmodern dance and even conceptual dance, and combine it with the visceral energy and the sort of virtuosity of hip-hop dance and Brazilian dance as well. And they created a piece called H3. This will be their US debut tour, and just really glad to be bringing Bruno Beltrão finally to America. Akram Khan, we're actually in a little thread here in the season of kind of some under-recognized, at least in the Midwest, master dance makers from different parts of the world. Akram is based in the UK. It's where he was born and grew up, but he's of Bangladeshi descent, and he incorporates a form of Kathak dancing with contemporary modern and postmodern dance. He was that little section of the video clip you saw where the dancers were swinging their arms, and he has a unison form of choreography at times in his pieces that is just completely infectious. And he made a piece called Bahak with a lot of young dancers from the National Ballet of China. As well as he decided to insert some of his own dancers. And it's really kind of a story, Bahak means the carrier, about young people finding their way in a globalized world. It's almost like they all came in to an airport terminal together. And there's some text, but most of it's told through projection and movement. And it's a really cool evening of dance theater. We're co-presenting this with Northrop over at Northrop Auditorium. I think it's great to, again, finally get Akram Khan's work here. Morgan Thorson, I mentioned to you, you saw clips of it in the season preview. This piece is exploring the notions of what is ecstasy. And the piece begins, and it's beautifully lit by Lenore Doxey, a lighting designer. They have these great costumes, and they do a slow processional as they come in. And as the work unfolds, Alan and Mimi from Low spin off and start creating music off to the side, and it really just takes you, it really kind of pulls you in, almost creating an image of what heaven in the sense of sound, light, and movement could be. It concludes with all of the dancers in the piece are really good singers as well, and it concludes with a kind of final choral section. Dave King is really a great musician in town. He's got more bands than anybody can count, and he keeps putting out great music. He's incredibly prolific and energetic and funny, and he's a part of a kind of bridge figure that brings new jazz and rock and other musical styles together. We've offered Dave, we invited him to come, and we wanted to sort of sponsor a mini festival and see how many of the bands he could bring together. And he wants to do them all. And he said Saturday he's premiering 2 bands. One is called Golden Valley is Now. Craig Taborn, keyboardist, Reed Anderson from The Bad Plus, and Dave are making up this trio. They all grew up within a few blocks of each other in Golden Valley, so that's why they're calling it Golden Valley is Now. And then the Dave King Trucking Company is a group that celebrates the great American trucking traditions and the sort of mythology around it. And he even said he's going to conclude the concert with a free jazz version of C.W. McCall's novelty hit from the 70s, Convoy. So here's Dave talking a little bit about this festival.
Hello, my name's Dave King, and I'm inviting anyone who's watching this to come and see me play with some people from the Twin Cities and some people from the New York City area. Different ensembles of mine performing some of my music. This kick drum that you see right here, a bass drum, I call it a kick drum, that's an industry term. But it's a bass drum. Looks a little bit like maybe a prop from the Music Man. It is. This is the original bass drum from the Music Man recording, not the film or not the... I think the Music Man is a film that should be remade in a real rock and roll cinematography style, kind of like Gone in 60 Seconds. The Music Man. Anyway, I would appreciate, and it's a pronunciation of appreciate that's more like the coastal Maine area. I'd like to appreciate. I hope you can all appreciate my new schedule. Keep it rolling. Anyway, my point is I have a few ensembles that are going to be in this area, and we're performing March 12th and 13th at the Walker Arts Center as a part of their Performing Arts Calendar 2009-2010. March 12th and 13th, 2010. I hope everyone will join me. This is not a bass drum. It's not a kick drum. This is a lamp table that my friend and I put together. I don't think it even looks like a bass drum. Really, there's hints of bass drum to it. Okay, it's true. I surround myself with these instruments because I live for it. You know? You know what I'm saying? I live for this stuff. Please come and celebrate these 2 nights with me. Don't ask to be on the guest list. Nope, there's no guest list. Thank you.
After seeing those together, maybe Eric Dyer from Radio Hall and Dave should get together and make a piece or something. Yeah. Anyway, the big night to the public might be the first night where the Bad Plus is playing, and his band Happy Apple, who's also become pretty well known and touring all over the place in Europe and elsewhere. But they're also going to put the 2 bands together and have the Bad Apple play. And then Buffalo Collision, that it features Tim Byrne from New York, and as well as Eric Fratsky and one other, and Dave, and they're going to come and play as well. The last time the only time I think the Bad Apple played was a festival around Ornette Coleman's music that happened here right after we opened about 5 years ago, and they played some Ornette tunes. And the second night, Saturday, is where Dave says, oh yeah, we're going to have all kinds of special guests, and he's going to slowly leak out who's coming Saturday, so that'll be a great night too. Moving on. Spalding Gray, is many of you know, was a master theater artist, really invented a form of solo performance, solo storytelling. We were lucky here at the Walker, and I personally, to have a long history with Spalding, who tragically passed away, died about 4 or 5 years ago. There was a show that's been put together of some of the writing that's been unpublished, as well as some pieces from great monologues that he's had. And it's performed by a group of kind of next generation performance artists who are now also in their kind of middle years. That's Ain Gordon there, he was kind of the leader in this ensemble. But also Carmelita Tropicalia is going to be in it, and David Kale, who has done some great monologue work himself, and a few other artists. There'll be a special guest artist from our own community each of the 3 nights. And we felt like it's made sense to bring, it's a beautiful show and very moving, and you really get a sense that this language, the writing of Spalding Gray, works even in other people's mouths. I think some people thought only Spalding could do his own pieces, but this is an evening of theater that weaves together many of his different writings. We also felt it was appropriate that it was 30 years ago, come this spring, that Spalding did his first performances here at the Walker, and he came back many, many times. In fact, it started with a mini festival of some of his monologues. This fall, we're opening a permanent collection exhibition called Event Horizon, which really looks at some of our history, not just in the visual arts, but also some key moments in performing arts. So we thought this was particularly appropriate to look back and celebrate the work of Spalding Gray. Baseku Kuyate is a musician out of Mali. He plays an instrument called the ngona. I'd only heard his records, but got to see the band perform at a festival in Belgium a few months ago, and it's fantastic. They put on an amazing show, and they really take ngona music kind of to this very 21st century level. I mean, at moments it felt like you were watching a number of like master kora players together. He's got a band that has a soprano, alto, tenor, and bass ngona, which is a type of animal-skinned instrument that it has 4 strings and has a really cool sound. He weaves those 4 ngonas together, and he's also got 3 other musicians, and his wife is a really regal presence, has a great singer, vocalist, and at times in the concert, suddenly they kick into this thing. It was like doing this Chuck Berry duck walk on unison thing, and it was a really wonderful concert experience. I think Baseku it's kind of long overdue for him to get to the States and tour, and we'll be presenting this with and at the Cedar Cultural Center. Saburo Teshigawara from Japan, really like Akram Khan, or perhaps somebody like Ryman Hogue. He's a master contemporary dance maker, but he's really of an even older generation. His work, unfortunately, is rarely seen in the States. He is as much a visual artist and a light artist as he is a dancer and choreographer. His company Karas, is remarkable, but his solo evenings are as well. These walls will barely fit on our stage. They go up about 40 feet high, and this shimmering light-like installation that he's designed surrounds him, and he performs like a man of 20 years younger than he actually is. He's very fluid, very interesting mix of lots of styles of movement, and you're really pulled into his performance in the most beautiful way. And that's here at the Walker, but it'll be co-presented with Northrop Auditorium. Eighth Blackbird is a contemporary music ensemble, been around, based in Chicago originally, now sort of half split in the East Coast. What they're known for is when they play classical music, they almost never use music. They actually have all of the music memorized. And they've played St. Paul's Sunday morning. They've did a small concert at McAllister a few years ago, but have not played in Minneapolis, have not been in Minnesota too much. And they really do something with contemporary classical music in a way to make it very riveting and very involving. So we're pleased to have Eighth Blackbird finally come and do a concert. It's actually an evening woven together that they've titled The Only Moving Thing. It includes music by the 3 founders of Bang on a Can, David Lang, Julia Wolfe, and Michael Gordon. But the centerpiece of the evening is a piece that won the Pulitzer Prize last year, Steve Reich's Double Sextet, which Eighth Blackbird commissioned. We're going to hear a little snippet. This is the last thing you'll either see or hear, but this is a snippet that hasn't been released yet, but of the Double Sextet by Steve Reich, performed by Eighth Blackbird. That's great. Thank you. This is often played against recording, where an ensemble will play with the recording that they did earlier. Here at the Walker, we've invited our own new music ensemble from the Twin Cities, Zeitgeist, to come, and they're very excited to be part of this evening. So it will be 12 musicians performing the double sextet, 8th Blackbird and Zeitgeist to conclude the evening. This also includes some movement and some kind of slightly structured ways in which it sort of unfolds almost in a theatrical way. And Susan Marshall, the choreographer, kind of helped 8th Blackbird with the way to kind of stage this concert. The final event of the season is a choreographer out of New York named John Jaspers. Very influential, very thoughtful and rigorous, very much a leader in the kind of contemporary dance scene in New York. William Forsythe's company and the Walker and a few other organizations are co-commissioning this new piece called Truth, Revised Histories, Wishful Thinking, and Flat Out Lies. John always has great dancers with him. He's interested with this piece in exploring how we construct belief systems and how we create a sense of assurance of what it is we do believe and how that can sometimes be very dangerous. He was a youth, as a kid, was a magician, and he's woven into some of his own bad magic acts into the evening as well. It's been 4 or 5 years since John Jaspers has been with us at the Walker, so we're really pleased to be having him back. That's the season. I really appreciate your being with us and watching this. Right now, we're going to kind of retire up to something that's brand new for us. We're opening this season something we're calling Bar on 4, the balcony bar, which is up on the 4th floor balcony. There's quite a bit of extra space, and we've kind of put together a nice place to have an affordable glass of wine or beer. I think it's $3 beers and $5 glasses of wine. And we hope you can stay with us. A lot of the Walker staff, and I'd like to say a special thanks to the whole crew here for putting this evening together, to Doug Bennett, and especially Emily Taylor, who really worked on putting this evening together. But I hope you'll be able to stick around and talk with us a little bit. And also a special thanks to Sudamani for performing tonight with us, and all the other artists who did their video hellos. So thanks again for being here. Look forward to seeing you this season.